Welcome to episode 79 of the Driving Forward podcast. It's Thursday, April 24th. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Reese Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Next week, we are live from Broker Carrier Summit in Indianapolis with a special episode of Driving Forward. We'll be live a little early, 11 a.m. Thursday, with Ken Riddle, the director of the FMCSA, Dale Prax, CEO of Freight Validate, Danielle Spinelli is back with Descartes Systems. We'll have Bain and myself, and following the interview with this crew, we're going to stay on the air for another hour or so and chat with the Broker Carrier Summit attendees as they walk by. We've done this in the past. This is our fourth Broker Carrier Summit that we've attended. Fourth out of five. This should be a lot of fun. As always, I'm really excited to have Ken Riddle on and talk about freight fraud and what the FMCSA is doing to approach those. If you have questions, queue them up for us. We're going to have a lot to talk about. The following week, we'll have on Julie Andrich. She's the CEO of Autumn Transport. After talking with Chris Thomas a countless number of times and meeting with the Autumn Transport crew a whole number of times at various events throughout the last few years, Julie and I are going to talk about her all-encompassing journey and what it takes to be a respected leader in this industry. Which brings us to today. There's people in this industry who grew up in freight. And then there's ones who came from the outside, looked around and said, yeah, we can do better. Today's guest is one of those people. John Leach didn't come up through the usual freight playbook. He built his chops in telecom. He helped scale Coyote Logistics into a commercial force, and now he's the CEO of FLS Transportation, a freight machine moving goods across both U.S. borders and doing it with culture, clarity, and execution most companies only talk about. In this episode, we're talking about what it really takes to build a brokerage that lasts, what's going to hit on leadership, technology, cross-border complexity, and the kind of accountability that either makes a company or breaks it. John's got a perspective this industry needs more of, and I promise you we're going to learn more about it. John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be with you, Nate.
So, you've led in telecom, a completely different beast. What was the biggest shock that you had when you stepped into the freight world?
Pricing volatility, really. In telecom, we know our margins, down to the, decimal point, and you sell contracts, whether it's fiber networks or data center contracts, and they're take or pay agreements. So you know what you're getting, and whether they're used or not, you know what the return on that's going to be. In freight, as you know that the pricing volatility changes that dynamic pretty drastically. You look from peak to trough, over the last cycle, we're 55-ish% down from peak to trough. That takes a lot of nimbleness to be able to execute in that kind of environment. And that's really the biggest difference between the telecom world and the freight world.
And when you say that, so looking at it from that perspective, and I think, I look at numbers and I don't necessarily look at the percentages because I'm not in your role anymore, but you look at that and say 55% down. That's wild that companies are operating with a 55% swing and still operating.
Yeah, so, that's year-over-year spot, peak to trough,
right.
Year spot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it shows the tenacity of the industry in some cases. The fact that companies are still swinging through this down market and how long we've been running, that's impressive. So
Yeah, I think that, you look at how much capacity came into the market during the COVID boom, and it's just taken a lot longer for that to bleed out than typical cycles. And so I think we're getting close to equilibrium in terms of supply and demand. But yeah, it's taken a lot longer than I think most analysts and people in the business thought it would.
yeah, I agree. I think longer than everyone, and then sprinkle in a few other things on top of it here that we're all dealing with now. And we were just having that conversation today. So
Yeah.
So was there a moment early on at Coyote or at FLS where this kind of hit you that this is a different kind of challenge from telecom to trucking? Obviously, you said the pricing swing was, and the pricing was a significant change, but how fast did that become relevant? How fast did that jump up and hit you when you came on at Coyote?
Pretty quickly. I think that, when you realize how the business ebbs and flows and how, we move with the market, you don't get quite as freaked out about it coming from where I came from. And you just have to have good data to be able to know, what you can sell things for profitably and what you can, what kind of volume you can drive to do that. As you know, in this business, top line revenue, isn't the difficult part. The difficult part is profitable top line revenue. And so we've really tried to focus on that. But from an industry point of view, it's drastic to start with. But once you realize how the freight brokerage business flows, it's not quite as dramatic.
And you hit on the good data thing. Without that good data, it's hard to know you have profitable business. So
That's right.
Obviously Coyote, being the shining star that it was or is, you guys probably had some great processes there, but many companies struggle with that good data and understanding what is profitable and what isn't. So yeah. I think that's a huge differentiator.
Yeah, I think Coyote is probably, way before its time in terms of data and technology from a freight brokerage standpoint. Jeff Silver built a really great company. He uniquely wanted someone from outside the industry to lead the sales and marketing efforts there when I came in. And that really gave me an opportunity because Coyote was, a large company at that point. When I started, they were $1 billion. And UPS came in, fairly quickly thereafter within the first year and did a lot of interesting things working with them and cross-selling. And but the growth was pretty dramatic through those 4 years.
So what leadership skills did you bring over? I'm gonna redefine that. I'm gonna say, what leadership muscles did you bring over from telecom that gave you an edge that others potentially don't or didn't have in logistics?
Yeah. So when I came, Abry Partners is the PE firm that owns FLS. And I knew Abry from my telecom days. We had bought a data center business from them. And so I had kept up with the principals and had talked to them about doing other things. They had found out that I was at Coyote and said, hey, we got this company in Canada. At the time, it was headquartered in Montreal. And, would you be interested? I looked at it and it was interesting. But they really wanted to take it from where it was. The founders had built a really nice company, but they wanted to take it from where it was to grow it into what it is today, which is a $550-600 million brokerage that does pretty significant business throughout the Canadas, North America, US, and so 40% of our business today is cross-border, 30 Canada, close to 10 Mexico, and the rest domestic US. But we had to do a couple of things. They wanted to do M&A, then we needed to redo the tech that existed and then build out the executive team to really build a structure that would be able to, you'd be able to base a 500 million plus business on. And so we did that. We've done 3 acquisitions. We did one in the first year. COVID kind of put us on our heels for a while in terms of any M&A, and then we did a couple of small ones here in the last 2 years, and they've all worked out really well. But we changed out the tech, and we realized, quickly we weren't going to be a technology company. We were going to be a freight brokerage that had really good tech that we could be able to serve our, really strong Fortune 500 base as well as our small to medium sized base. I think we've done that. Our IT team has done a really nice job of developing the tech that we have, so we can do some proprietary things, but we can also plug in all the other tools that we need to be able to deliver the service at a very high level.
Oh, great points. So you've grown fast over the last few years too, or would you say that that's been kind of fast, or would it be more of a steady growth?
I think steady. I mean, we really obviously grew very quickly through COVID, like most of our counterparts did. Cross-border business, forgetting the last couple of weeks, is a little bit more stable than domestic U.S. business in terms of competition. Still very competitive, but a little bit more stable. So we've really focused on building that. We've taken, a hit in this downturn, like, all of our competitors have, but, we feel like the business is in a really good spot, and we're really poised to be able to benefit from what we think is an upcycle once we get all this tariff noise behind us.
So let's jump into that a little bit. So with 40% cross-border business, obviously the last few weeks have been interesting. We work with a number of companies, a substantial number of companies that do cross-border business in large volumes. Are you changing your behavior right now to deal with any impacts? Are you what are you? I mean, what can you talk about there from a strategy standpoint right now?
Yeah, not really changing anything right now. The shippers that we talk to, there's been some changes. I think the fact that products that were compliant with the USMCA weren't affected helped. So some of the steel, auto parts, lumber,
right?
We had some exposure to that, but not a ton. So the disruption really is twofold from a concern standpoint. First of all, it's just, we have to be a lot more nimble. People are moving supply chains around, so that changes pricing and sometimes can impact contract pricing for some of our large customers. So we stay close to customers and make sure that we're doing right by them and supporting them, but also keeping them informed as to what's going on in terms of pricing. And then, we also try and stay as nimble as possible, because it seems like, we're one tweet away from, policy changing, and,
right.
it goes from, Armageddon to everything's fine to Armageddon to everything's fine. So I think that, we have a team, in the US and Canada that, have been doing this for a long time. We've got a really tenured staff of operators as well as salespeople. And so we've seen this disruption, similar, when COVID started, it was really bad initially, and then
Right.
a really nice tailwind. And we think that the opportunity for that, to happen, exists again.
So what was the strategy initially to adopt so much cross-border freight? I mean, 40% of the footprint, certainly there's plenty of companies, but that and FLS being based out of Montreal, was that's still a big footprint. And then to go to Mexico too, is that the continued strategy? Is that just because of the Montreal side, the FLS being originally, much larger in Canada? What was the the initial plan, and
Yeah,
how was that built out?
Yeah, we were, when I started, 55%-ish Canada, 45 US. We always felt like there was a bigger opportunity, in the US. Obviously, the market is a lot better, but we also wanted to make sure, both for the employee base that was there, they understood that we felt like, the Canadian piece was a differentiator for us, and a really, really valuable piece of what is FLS. And we not only wanted to grow that, we wanted to cultivate that to make sure that it didn't go away. So, we communicated that vision to the teams there, to let them know that, we were going to, even though there would be changes, we were going to continue to grow Canada. When we did the Scott Logistics acquisition, that kind of flipped the revenues 60-40 US to Canada. So we knew at a certain point we were going to re-domicile the business to the US, but still keep Canada, keep the employees in Canada, and keep the locations in Canada, and we've done that. So even though now the US business is, a greater portion of the total stream than Canada, the Canadian piece and the cross-border piece particularly is still really, really important. And what we think differentiates us, it allows us to have different conversations with our customers than someone
Right.
just selling domestic US freight would have. We can be more competitive. So, one of the things that we did when I came in, each of the branches really dealt independently of each other. And there were a number of reasons for that, but we felt like we were leaving a lot on the table, where we had great relationships that were managed in Canada that had a lot of US business opportunity, as well as a lot of US business, in good relationships. But there was a Canadian piece that we weren't taking advantage of. So we really, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, had broken down those walls, gotten people to collaborate. And that took some doing, because the salespeople and the branch directors are very they're competitive, but they're also, they've built a lot of goodwill with the customers, and they don't want to just give that relationship to someone that may not have the same motivation to keep that business growing, or even put a risk of adding a new service that would potentially harm the list. So it took a while, but once we started having a lot of successes where, and in our plan, you get, we can split, the gross profit between branches. And so when people realized that 50% of something was a lot better than 100% of nothing, and then we showed some really, really good stories of growth with customers through that, it caught on. And now, we have people collaborating hourly on, specific customer opportunities, specific projects, specific RFPs. And it's really, really great to see, because it truly allows us to benefit from our distributed network, our branch distribution network. Whereas before, we weren't benefiting as much from it because folks were kind of in a silo. But now, we've got, significant relationships in both US, Canada, and now Mexico that, we've grown because we've brought in expertise in either a different mode that existed in a branch that they didn't know about, or, some pricing expertise that folks could move. But it's been really, really great to see, and it's something that we talked a lot about.
Knowing the FLS story as well as I do, and I've been involved in some fashion with FLS for a very, very long time, so going way, way back. So I kind of to scratch this one a little bit further, the culture of FLS has changed a lot over the last few years. And you can see this on social media. You see this when you interact with the teams of FLS. What's some things that you had done, or you or your team had done, and you kind of called this out from the sales team side, and I would say one of them was definitely, make the U.S. and Canada interact more together. But what's something that you've done to stabilize culture? Because there's definitely a more cohesive unit today, and you can see that there's a lot more rah FLS, I would say, today than there was some time ago. So, and that's kudos to you and your leadership team.
Yeah, listen, the prior founders built a really good company.
Right.
It was a
Absolutely
very growing company that was, they stuck to what they knew, and they were growing that well. So that left a really good foundation.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of things. The first thing we did was even though I know you can never over communicate, because when you think you're over communicating, there's always people that don't think you communicate enough. But we really put what our vision and strategy was out there to the folks, and we did it in every branch meeting or visit I had. We did it in town halls. We continue to do it in quarterly town halls. So I think once you set that clear vision and strategy, then it's up to you to stay true to it and let people know that not only this is what you say you're going to do, but you're going to do it. And so we reiterated what we said, what we're doing, and how that supports the vision and the strategy, and continued to do that. And then once you do that, then you have to empower and inspire the team to hit the goals. And we put bonuses in for the back office folks that didn't exist prior. We have a recognition for tenure that didn't exist, that folks really like. And we've got 15, 20-year employees, and that really have helped get us to where we are, and we want to recognize those folks and treat them well. But you also have to let folks know you have to embrace change, because this business, you have to change and evolve, or you're going to get run over. It's moving too quickly, and technology. Really, I came from a technology background, but the technology is really just starting. Like I said, Coyote was, I think, ahead of the curve, but 6-7 years ago, the money coming into this space and the tech coming into this space was pretty amazing.
Right.
But that's new to people, and people, I think, from a job security point of view, think, oh, great technology, that's going to replace me, and that's the concern. And so you have to explain, that it makes you more efficient, not necessarily replace you, and you can just do more with better tech and move quicker and make your job easier. And so those kinds of discussions we had a lot of. And then you lead with integrity and accountability, and this is big for me. You could play fast and loose if you want to in this business. It's never really something that I've done or wanted to do. And if I'm going to set a clear vision and strategy and empower you to do that, I'm going to hold you accountable to driving the results. And so we instituted a long time ago a weekly forecasting call that I host, where the branch directors forecast what they're going to do, and then change it as things change on a weekly basis. We have them involved in the budget process at the branch level, so they really feel like they have ownership of that branch. And they get paid to drive the results of that branch. But the weekly forecast call that I still host, the first 6 months, if we got within 25% of what folks forecasted, that would have been a good deal. because they just had never done it before, and you need
Sure.
to give them coaching and talk about the things to look at to help drive it. Now, Nate, we get we're within 1.5 to 2% of the forecast on a monthly basis, which is just great to see, because it pushed the branch directors and the salespeople down into the business to make sure they understood what was going on, from a purely numbers driven standpoint. And that's volume plus price equals X. And it was thought of a little bit more loosely prior to that. So I really enjoy that. I still host those calls most weeks, and learn a lot in doing it.
I mean, that's a perfect example. I say that frequently. Paint the target and start working towards the target and improve your metrics as you go. You can't, anyone listening, set the target and start working towards it. You're not going to be perfect in the beginning. And I write a ton about integrity. That is a baseline in this industry. A lot of people speak about it, and they say that they're leading with integrity or living their life with integrity. But, to actually take the action and do it is a whole nother thing. It's hard. It's hard to, and everybody makes mistakes, but that being said, you can fix it with integrity too. So you can make that mistake and come out of it with integrity. But I respect that, 25% off and shore it up from there. Take your best effort. Let's get that baseline and fix it from there. So
and we didn't leave them, in the wind either. And then what you see happening, and we did this in telecom all the time, but what you see happening is now there's a competitive juice that starts flowing between the branches.
Right.
Here. They want to be, they want to be close to their forecast, but we do it forecast against a budget, and budgeting in this business is also very difficult, just because, you're not sure what the headwind's going to be, or how, in this case, how deep the trough is going to be and how long it's going to last. So we make our best efforts there, and don't beat people up about the budget if we know we've missed, something along those lines, which is timing of the upcycle, or, pricing, hasn't moved the way we wanted it to. But, the competitiveness amongst the branches is really fun to see, because we have some good conversations on those calls.
Sure, absolutely, and creating that internal gamification of it, and having everybody bat it back and forth. So if someone tours a FLS facility today, what would they notice about the way your people operate? Anything differentiating that they would call out after walking through?
I think they would, they'd see a very collaborative group of people. We have the majority of our folks now in the branches are in the office. We still are flexible for folks' needs if they need a day to work remote. I mean, one of the things that COVID taught us that frankly I wasn't a believer in early on was the ability to be productive and work remote. And so I know we can do that now, but I also know we benefit when we're together in a branch, and the ops people can talk to the sales people, and the branch director can talk to the people directly, and you just get more stuff done that way. But you'd see a collaborative branch. We have continually upgrading the look and feel of the branches. So when we move branches into new facilities, we give them a makeover, and so you'll see the same kind of logo, same kind of colors, same those kinds of things. You'd notice, and that brings a level of cohesiveness, I think, to the teams, and they feel part of something bigger than just the branch. But it's similar to any freight brokerage that you would walk into, other than that, which is maybe a little bit more, because we have such a tenured staff, a little bit more sedate than Coyote was when I was there, when you had 1,000 people in a building, and very, very aggressive and motivated folks. We have that as well. We just because we're in a distributed branch network. We have fewer. I think our largest branch is 35ish to 40 people, and we have some branches that are much smaller than that.
Yeah, so you don't have the sea of people. So yeah, fair enough. So I think we're going to go to break here real quick, and if you guys have a question for John, queue it up, send it on over. We'd love to field any questions. Also, when we come back, we're going to talk technology. We'll probably I have a couple more questions for you related to culture. Maybe tap a little bit about cross-border freight some more, and then talk a little bit about the future. So once again, you guys have any questions for John, queue them up, send them over, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Great. Thanks.
If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the fast-paced world of trucking and logistics, time is everything. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep transportation and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them. With our industry connections and proactive approach, we keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise. And we are back. So, John, technology, I think you kind of mentioned it 6-7 years ago, even 10 years ago. Technology was going wild in this industry. Still is going wild to some extent, but it's maybe slowing down a little bit. Where do you draw the line between innovation and noise? I mean, you're probably getting hit by every possible solution, every possible idea in freight tech for a brokerage or 3PL. So where do you kind of draw that line between viable solution and just noise, and how do you guys manage that?
Yeah, so we, as I said earlier, decided a long time ago that because as I was coming into this role, the tech freight brokerages were all coming in with deep pockets and
right.
Bravado. So you had Uber, you had Convoy, Transfix, you had these well-funded brokerages that were supposed to disintermediate companies like FLS. And I remember I was on a panel at an investment bank conference in the first couple of years, and I always felt like I would much rather start with a really good customer base and be able to add tech to be able to make deliver a better service to that customer base and grow that way, versus having the best technology and then having to develop a customer base. So we've, at FLS, we've always been a little bit more high touch, white glove, especially because of the cross-border influence that we have. So we've never been focused on just high volume, really low margin freight. If there's an opportunity to win that business and we think we can do it effectively, we will. But I think our margin profile is well, I don't think, I know our margin profile is a lot higher on a gross profit per load than most of our domestic competitors, certainly. And I think, but from a technology standpoint, we just didn't ever feel like, great tech was going to take away the good things that FLS did. So, but what we knew was we needed to upgrade our technology and be able to have a platform where you could input newer things that came along that made sense. And so, we've done a really nice job, I think, in having a platform that we can, develop ourselves. We've got a great developer that works his buns off to deliver, a lot of great stuff for us. We work with the platform provider to develop things that the broader community can use as well. And then, they've done a good job in creating adaptive integrations that all these new technology folks can plug into. So, what we have now is a platform that has an opportunity to utilize all these things and still be, one platform versus, having to toggle in between, a bunch of different platforms to be able to deliver the service. And it's really served us well. So we have, today we have technology that, allows us to deliver things a lot more efficiently, allows us to communicate a lot more efficiently between the branches, and really deliver service with all the things, all the visibility requirements that our customers require, delivering it on time and quickly. But we're constantly looking at ways to improve that delivery as well. So we talk to folks all the time about new technology that we think can enhance what we're doing, but we feel really good about the platform that we have, and we've been able to integrate 3 companies onto it. So that's another thing that we've done that Telecom taught me, is that when you do M&A, it's much better to take the time to integrate it versus running 3 or 4 different standalone businesses, because you never get the full benefit of the acquisition if you don't. And so we've integrated all 3 that we've done, and they've been 3 very different size businesses and 3 very different types of businesses. So it's been served us well.
That's great news, and that we call them assimilations, but those assimilations are important. We have organizations that we work with that just leave them sit, and many times let them operate, and so certainly pulling them into your organization to benefit is advisable. I mean, why, unless they're a golden goose, the economies of scale that you benefit from are valuable. So we did get a question from Ray Lampkins. What's the smartest way for a small logistics company to stay independent but still tie into a larger network or group for long-term sustainability and growth? So you have an answer for that one? That's a good question, right?
That's a very good question. I think that you have to, as a small player in this environment, really manage your resources well. It's easy to chase top line revenue and then have that flip on you to try and grab growth. I think it's a better strategy as a small provider to figure out what you do well and maximize the opportunities that you have to do that, to really build a long-standing and viable foundation. And then, this industry is growing, say the last downturn, but the industry as a whole is growing, faster than GDP. So that volume is going to be there, and the growth is going to be there as a small player to become larger. But I think it's easy to try and diffuse yourself by trying to be everything for everyone. And I would tell the smaller folks out there to really focus on what they do well and be as good as you can be at that. And either a larger provider will learn of you and potentially bring you into in a formal way, as we've done with some of the smaller folks that we've bought from an acquisition standpoint. But if not, will have built a sound foundation of business that that will sustain through the ups and downs of this environment, which as I said earlier, are pretty dramatic.
I was just speaking with someone the other day about that, a smaller brokerage, smaller truck line, about staying in niche until those opportunities present themselves. If you're niche and or boutique, you name the term, eventually, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You can sprint if you want, if you're bootstrapped, go ahead and sprint if those opportunities appear. But that slow roll, that marathon, and being careful and keeping yourself sustainable, I think, is important. You can. This is a dangerous industry to take too much risk, and if you stay boutique, and eventually the opportunity comes across that's big, and you can make that move, that's wonderful. But that might take 10 years. That might take 12 years. So, or the opportunity, like you said, John, comes up where there's a larger player that takes notice and likes your niche business, which still may be of significance when you look at it. You may have a niche business, still may be 40 people.
Sure.
It may be that's still fairly significant. So we have another question. This one from Sam Estano. So how do you maximize collaboration while also maximizing productivity? Do you view them as going hand in hand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do view them as going hand in hand, because I think when we collaborate, we are definitively going to do more with the same amount of people, which means you're becoming more productive. And as long as you provide, the platform to be able to do that, where people can communicate easily, there's a commission program that allows people to work together, but also get paid, because no one's doing this business just for the fun of it. But maximizing collaboration, by definition, is going to improve productivity, because we're going to win a lot more when we collaborate with the same amount of people than we otherwise would have. So I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Incentivizing that collaboration is huge. So if you don't incentivize the collaboration,
it wouldn't work. Yeah, it wouldn't work.
Right.
You would not get traction, because folks would be very hesitant to put their relationship at risk, if there wasn't a benefit to doing it.
Right, especially in that particular role. That other roles in the industry may work accordingly, but in this particular role, in this particular business, I agree completely. Let's slide back to border crossing a little bit. What's something that companies misunderstand about running freight into Mexico or Canada? There's, you get a lot of U.S. based carriers that think that they understand it, but they probably don't. So when I say that, maybe something comes to mind to you. What would that be?
Well, they're two very different borders. The Canada border has really done a nice job digitizing a lot of the process in moving the freight. Mexico has not. So there's a lot more moving parts on the Mexico side that have to be managed, and it doesn't move as quickly as we would like. And so I think that's the first thing, and we're still learning that. I mean, Mexico is a quickly growing part of our business, but it's still, small relative to Canada and small relative to the U.S. But we're in the middle of establishing a presence in Mexico, which we think is important if we really want to be taken seriously as a player down there. But the two environments, are just very, very different. And the fact that we have, a loyal carrier base, in Canada that will come to the U.S. because, there's an opportunity to get backhaul to go back versus trying to get, your U.S. carriers up there and whether or not there'll be a backhaul or not, I think is, one of the challenges from a domestic provider standpoint in building that business. So, we feel like we have a nice leg up on having those relationships that we've had for, some respects decades with the carrier community and continue to give them consistent freight and pay well. And that's the way we've built the business and will continue to.
And looking forward, what's your next challenge or opportunity you see in the cross-border markets?
Well, it depends on the next tweet, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. I suppose I could have predicted that answer.
Yeah, I think that listen, the backdrop right now, the macro backdrop is, China shipments, ocean shipments are down 30% right now. I think Hapag-Lloyd just came out and said that. They're more coming from Vietnam and Thailand, but that kind of dramatic reduction is going to impact, freight moving across the United States and Canada. How long does that last? Is really the big question. My concern has always been not that we would be able to move with the markets and we've proven an ability to do that over time, but it's really the self-inflicted wound that would be creating a recession when there wasn't a need to do that. And I don't think all of the numbers suggest that that's not close to happening right now, but if this prolongs, I think there's a potential for that. And if that happens, then that just slows the demand for goods across the United States and Canada, and that wouldn't be good for anybody. So that's my biggest concern right now. But I think the rhetoric has already slowed, I think, out of Washington. I think that there's significant motivation for specifically U.S. and China to come to some kind of agreement where we can get this behind us. But the economic backdrop today is decent, and it's going to take a little bit of a shot based on the last couple of weeks. But if it can remain decent, then I think we have a really good opportunity to have a nice second half of the year.
So that's a great segue into the last couple of questions, which really comes down to the future. What mistakes are people or freight company leaders making today that may cost them in the next 3 years? It's volatile out there. Some people aren't really grasping the understanding of what's happening. So what mistakes do you see people making or potentially making that are going to cause some significant pain and make the recovery, if they can recover, difficult over the next 3 years?
Well, I think it starts with your pricing methodology, in the RFP cycle, depending on your size, larger folks do more, smaller folks may do less, but making sure you hedge that effectively so you don't get caught on the wrong side of the price moving the way, in a dramatic way that you don't think it will. I'm not close enough to my competitors to know the mistakes that they're making. I think from my perspective, we're really cautious of, getting ahead of our skis in terms of either opening up branches. We opened up a Denver branch about a year ago. We've had a lot of success there in doing that. We've done 2 small acquisitions that, in a really, downturn environment that we feel really, really good about. And they're both performing as we had hoped they would, even though the market has, really has underperformed what we thought it would do. So I think, just managing in an environment that is going to continue to be volatile until, especially now, until you get some sense that it's going to settle, and maybe sitting on your hands a little bit and waiting it out versus making some dramatic moves that, if the environment changes, drastically, you're going to get caught on the wrong side of it. And that's, that could be fatal for some people.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what we're seeing from a lot of companies. We just saw, Volvo lay off a number of employees. That indicative of trucks not being purchased. And, we're seeing a lot of companies just go back to hold.
Yeah.
So basically where we were last year is just hold. So no CapEx, no, just hold.
You understand that. I mean, I would have a tough time, as a leader of one of those companies to make a decision to deploy large sums of CapEx in an environment that, is could be flipped on its head, tomorrow. Right. And I think that unfortunately, that adds to the slowing of everything in the economy. When people aren't investing and just sitting on their hands, everything starts to slow. And so hopefully it's a shorter term uncertainty than longer.
Agreed. So final question. When the FLS story is told, however long from now, when John's no longer at FLS, and your story's told, your legacy is told, what do you hope people will say you built?
Well, I hope they say, I left I inherited a really good company, and I hope to leave, FLS as a really good company. And I think that from my perspective, as long as folks say that I acted with integrity and helped to lead, that's really all I can do in my role. And you grow people's careers and give them more to do, and we do that monthly, where we're promoting folks and giving them more responsibility to do things, and that's really always great to see. I talked about our tenure of our workforce, and it's a really, really tenured workforce of folks that are committed to doing the things they need to do to grow FLS. And then, we try and add things to it to make it fun and make it exciting and make it enjoyable as well. And, if that's the legacy that gets left for the next person to pick up, then I've done my job.
I think you're well on the way for that. So just looking from the outside in. So how can people find you? How can people find FLS? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, we have, FLS Transport.com is our website, and we're constantly tweaking that and updating that. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so folks can reach out and find me there. I'm at some of the conferences and shows, and if folks have seen it and want to. I've always had, in our business, a very open door policy, and folks from all different levels, can walk into my office and ask a question or say hello. That doesn't always happen at my level. Sure. I think it kind of breaks down walls and lets people know that, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like they do. So,
yeah. No, I hear you. So, well, John, this has been great. I appreciate your time today. Anytime you need anything, feel free to reach out to me as well. My door is open anytime. So,
it's great to be with you, Nate. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to chatting to you sometime soon.
All right, great.
All right. Conversations like this remind me why I started the podcast in the first place. Because behind the freight lanes, the border crossings, and the endless chase for efficiency, there's people building something real. John Leach didn't just take over a company, he took ownership of its direction, its people, and its future. And in an industry full of noise, that kind of clarity and leadership stands out. We all talk about strategy in this space, about tech, about scaling, about winning. But what really matters, it's culture, it's grit. It's doing what you said you'd do every single day, especially when no one's watching. I think we talked about it. It's integrity. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to lead a team, build a business, or maybe just survive this freight cycle, remember this: the market doesn't care about your excuses, but it will reward your effort. Stay accountable, stay sharp, and lead like it actually matters, because it does. So thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.